I got injured with just 5 weeks to go before my next marathon. A hip flexor strain meant I basically couldn't run, and the timing for this couldn't be worse as it was right at the peak of my marathon training plan. But now, 1 month later, I'm mostly recovered, and some way, somehow, it's just enough time for me to scrape together some training to be ready for race day. In this video, I'll be going over what my 5-week plan is, how I'm getting on with training, and how fast I'm gonna run this marathon. This is the journey to the waterfront. Hey, if you're new here, my name is Eric. I'm a hobbyist runner from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I have aspirations of running the Boston Marathon. With 5 weeks to go, it's just not possible to return to my previous plan, so I decided, I know me, I coached myself to a sub 125 half, so I'm not half bad. Get it? Anyways, before I write any plan, I have a check-in with myself and have a think about what mileages I want to hit and what the overall objective is gonna be. In this case, I know I'm coming back from an injury and I know I'll be healing throughout the block. With a big 5-week gap from my last consistent training week, I know I won't be able to add much fitness. If anything, it'll be about bringing what I lost back to some degree. Anyway, left the plan downstairs, 1 second. Here's the plan. I'm ramping up from 85k per week to 110 and finally 130 as a peak. A taper of 2 weeks follows that. I'll have this linked in the description as a Google Doc if you want to have a look, but keep in mind, this is my plan, it's tailored to me. In terms of details though, this plan is just stuff I know works for me. Lots and lots of easy miles with some threshold sessions, some faster interval work, and long run workouts to tide me over. That said, this plan is not going to be written in stone, and I have the advantage of knowing what each run's intent is, so I can modify or skip one if I see fit. Non-negotiable though is strength training. I'm technically still injured, I can't hold the same easy run pace that I used to, and I've gone from 5:30 per kilometer to about 5:45 or 6:15 depending on how I feel. So I've still got to make sure my right hip flexor and everything supporting it doesn't fall to bits on race day and beyond, because this race is not the final stop. The key change here will be the addition of some weights, so for my hip flexor routine, there'll be some ankle weights, and I'm also throwing in some weighted squats and calf raises.
By the way, this is only 55 pounds. Not crazy heavy, just enough for me to feel something.
Back to running though, you'll notice there's not a whole lot of marathon pace or steady pace running, and that's not without good reason. I just straight up didn't build up well to deal with zone 3 or steady pace running, and it really got exposed in the weeks prior to my injury. I'll be revisiting steady pace as a training stimulus after the marathon, but for now it's just about going back to basics and what I know works. A lot of this plan does depend on my hip flexor strain improving though, which is the thing that scares me the most. I'm making a bet that I can heal like freaking Wolverine. And even if I do, the effort that's gonna be required throughout is going to feel pretty constant. Feeling better? Well, here's more kilometers. Have fun. So that's the plan. How did I get on? Week 1 went decently well. It was meant to reflect a deload week in my typical training, so a nice return to running. Although it didn't hurt to run, it still wasn't comfortable, and I was having a really hard time generating much power from my right side, and I think my paces here reflect that. Also, this meant I just really couldn't feel myself running much. Holding a camera on a selfie stick really does take it out of me. On Wednesday, there was a session, 10 by 400 meters between 5 and 3K race pace with 90 seconds of rest. Now, usually this isn't a session I'd schedule for a marathon, but it is one I do for running economy and to reactivate my body after some time off. Running really fast and getting time in zone 5 is really good for that. Critically, I did make the 90-second target I set for myself with each interval, so that's a win. The same philosophy applied to Saturday's long run session, 3 by 5K on and 5K off at marathon pace. Now, I typically don't like the session just because of how long the rests are, but it is a really good way of feeling out any potential race pace early on. If you can hold it in that last 5K, then chances are it's gonna be sustainable for race day. Week 2 was a return to my usual 100k per week. It started off nice with a couple of easy runs. Wednesday's session was a bit rough. It was a 20-minute tempo run and I just did not have a good read on what pace to run it at. I targeted 4:01 per kilometer, which is my half marathon PB pace, but turns out even that was too hard and I slowed down towards the end. But it might not have just been me recovering from an injury that caused that, because after the session, I felt a scratchy throat and a fever. How did I get sick? Well, on Tuesday, I had an early start, waking up at 5 a.m. for a 15K run, and then unexpectedly, things got very busy at work. I was running around downtown Toronto all day, then stowed my gear before attending a Jays game. End to end, I was out there for about 12 hours, and there was a very, very dense crowd exiting the Sky Dome all at once. So I think I might have caught something there or on the TTC ride home. So now I was really redlining my body. This was gonna be tough with an injury on the mend, but now to do it while fighting a respiratory tract infection, well, that was gonna be something else. I decided to cancel Thursday's run since that was the worst day of illness, and also it was a recovery run anyway, so not a big deal. It wasn't as bad as most infections I fought off in the past, but it was still noticeable. I felt a bit feverish, my muscles were achy, and also had a bit of a runny nose. And all of this was just in time for the ramp up to peak week. Friday had my first double day, an easy 5K on my lunch break, and then a 15K in the evening. It was challenging, but it was nothing compared to Saturday. A 30K long run with 8K worth of progression in the back half. The paces were between 5 minutes to 4:30 per kilometer, and an additional caveat was the run was out in the sun, and that is really dumb now that I'm saying it out loud, but I didn't really have a choice because I woke up late on account of feeling sick, and I also felt like I needed one really good session in the heat. I still had a bit of a fever, and about 5K into the progression, I felt the heat really getting to me. I had to stop, I sat on the porch for a bit, and my vision was really wonky. Here's a simulation of it. It was really trippy. After a short break, I went back out, finished off the fastest part of the progression. It wasn't ideal, but given the circumstances, I'm glad I finished. Thankfully, the hip situation was improving day by day, and the fever subsided on Sunday. Week 3 was going to be the make or break week. It was a very aggressive jump up in mileage, but my thinking was this would be the last week that any fitness could be added or retrieved, so make it count was the motto. The biggest addition for this week would be the presence of double days on Monday and Friday. I also meant for there to be one on Wednesday, but my work schedule did get in the way a bit, so I had to rejig the mileage a bit, moving it onto other runs. The key session for this week was 5 by 1600 meters, and thankfully the hip held up for this one, but towards the end I started to get really gassed. Also, I did cough a lot between intervals.
Okay, we're back. Sorry for the lack of footage on these. I've also gotten horrifically sick, which means I just can't speak very well to the camera, even now to do this pompous, posh accent, because it's just easier to speak like this. Feels like we're along with the running channel, don't I? I was feeling a bit sus, but I think it's still workable. Just gotta be careful. Main problem is I don't know if this pace is gonna be realistic. You can always adjust. Not gonna lie, this is actually kind of nerve-wracking. All right, no sense in standing around. First repeat, let's go. Okay, gotta slow down, gotta slow down, gotta slow down. Take it easy. It's a threshold repeat. Okay, first repeat's done. Didn't feel bad, didn't feel good either. Good thing is, not a lot of lactic acid. Probably thanks to like all the shade over here. Okay, yeah, feeling good about this. Might be able to finish. Normally I jog for these rests, but maybe not a good idea right now.
Here are the splits, but for reference, I could previously take these at between 6:10, 6:15 to give you an idea, but it's all right. We're technically still on the mend. For my long run session, it was one I ran a lot in my half marathon build up, a 32.5K run with a 22K warm up, and then 8 by 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off. The on would be at about threshold, and again, it wasn't as fast as I was used to, but I did manage to finish the session strong as opposed to a dramatic slowdown, and that's a win in my books. Now, I usually don't go into detail about recovery runs because they're really boring, but the one on Sunday was something special. Up until this point, I was landing pretty hard because my right hip flexor was so weak. I just really couldn't catch myself, so I was just slapping the pavement a lot and wasting a lot of energy. On Sunday though, about halfway through the run, I started to notice my footsteps were getting a lot quieter again. I was landing soft. So my running economy had turned a corner and I was running a little bit more efficiently now. And with that, we're now at the taper phase. I'm filming this about 4 days in, and the idea of a goal time has been floating around my mind. Now, I can't use the VDOT calculator here because I just don't have a recent race result anymore. Instead, I'm using Runalyze. It's a relatively complicated tool, so I don't have time to go over it entirely, but it's giving me a time of about 3 hours and 20 minutes, so that's gonna be our goal here. I know I haven't actually run the race yet, but looking back on the past 8 weeks, it's been hard. Knowing I won't be running this race at my full potential is still a tough pill to swallow. I've also been thinking of hypotheticals like, what if I just took that one day off? Or what if I just stuck to my own training plan? And well, that's irrelevant. I know what it's gonna take to run a sub 3 now, and I just got to keep moving forward. But for now, if you made it this far into the video, consider giving it a like, best way to support the channel. Subscribe to see how I do on race day. Have you ever come back from an injury? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for watching.